Some of my classmates are now in jail and they are being tortured. My special thoughts to my best friend Arjang Davoudi, who has 11 more years to serve. 70 million people in my country suffer for the past 29 years because of a small group of fanatic mullahs. Iranians love peace and love the world, especially the United States of America. I hope one day our country can once again be friends with everyone, including Israel. Please help us. Every one of you can help the Iranian young people so they can achieve their dreams for a secular democratic country. Let us look into the future. As my American role model, Thomas Jefferson, said, I like the dreams of the future better than the history of the past.
All right, when we come back, by the way, you're going to meet the leader of the Iranian protesters that's here in the United States and has been planning and plotting and is in touch with all of those protesters, putting their lives on the line that we just played for you. This guy is an amazingly courageous man.
Stay right here for our final news roundup and information overload in the final hour of the Sean Hannity Show.
It is far past time for the nations of the world to confront another reckless regime, one that speaks openly of mass murder, vowing death to America, destruction to Israel, and ruin for many leaders and nations in this room. The Iranian government masks a corrupt dictatorship behind the false guise of a democracy. It has turned a wealthy country with a rich history and culture into an economically depleted rogue state whose chief exports are violence, bloodshed, and chaos. The longest suffering victims of Iran's leaders are in fact its own people. Rather than use its resources to improve Iranian lives, its oil profits go to fund Hezbollah and other terrorists that kill innocent Muslims and attack their peaceful Arab and Israeli neighbors. This wealth, which rightly belongs to Iran's people, also goes to shore up Bashar al-Assad's dictatorship, fuel Yemen's civil war, and undermine peace throughout the entire Middle East. We cannot let a murderous regime continue these destabilizing activities while building dangerous missiles, and we cannot abide by an agreement if it provides cover for the eventual construction of a nuclear program. The Iran deal was one of the worst and most one-sided transactions the United States has ever entered into. Frankly, that deal is an embarrassment to the United States, and I don't think you've heard the last of it. Believe me.
I remember that movement. It's a much larger protest than what we're having today. It was based on the Green Party and what happened in the election then. I do think that that was an appropriate time for the United States to have sent a clearer message that we stand by those who try to represent the rights of people. That's what the United States is all about. And it would have been important to have sent that message at the time.
All right, news roundup and information overload hour here on the Sean Hannity Show. That was the president 4 months ago predicting exactly what would be happening in Iran. Now we have protests all across the entire country. Police stations now are being attacked by the protesters, by the people. That includes military installations. That includes chanting of death to the Ayatollah. Very interesting to watch a divide that exists between the radical mullahs that rule Iran and its people. The scary thing at this point is how many people now are going to die as they try to stop this movement of the people. Two very different things. I mean, to hear Leon Panetta admit that Obama made a mistake back in 2009, well, that's an understatement. Just like the Iranian deal was probably the dumbest act of appeasement in the history of mankind. You don't give radical mullahs that are chanting death to America and death to Israel and burning American flags and burning Israeli flags, you don't give them $150 billion when you know that their goal and their desire is to get nuclear weapons and A squared plus B squared equals C squared, nuclear weapons in the hands of radical Islamists, well, that could equal a worldwide catastrophe that we've never witnessed before, and potentially hundreds of millions of people, their lives at risk, and which is a scary scenario. But this naivete among people like the Clintons, and Winston Churchill took on Neville Chamberlain, and Obama thought he could basically kiss the ass of radical Islamists and think that somehow they're going to like him better. And they did not. Now, we have a very special guest. His name is Amir Fakhravar. I hope I said that well, Amir. And he's with the National Iranian Congress, Senate Chairman. He's the founder of the Iranian Confederation of Students. You have been active in this movement from the get-go. You're in contact with these protesters daily. Tell us about it.
Thank you, Sean, for having me. And, when I was listening to President Trump's comments, I couldn't be more agree with him. He was 100% right about everything he said about Iran. And I can say I couldn't be more disagree with President Obama, but what everything he have done in Iran. During 2009, when we had millions of people in just one city in Tehran, we had 4,500,000 people in the street. They have been chanting death to dictator at that time. And President Obama said, I don't want to take side. But he lied. That was not about taking side. He could be quiet at that time, but he was taking the side of regime because that was the secret negotiation about Iran deal at that time. They started,
and we know that that's true. That negotiation went on for a very long period of time before anybody ever knew about it, culminating in literally, plane loads of cash and other currencies being delivered to the mullahs.
Exactly. The negotiation was started at the summer of 2008 when he was still campaigning. And then he started sending letter to Iranian Supreme Leader and telling him, if I become president, then I will help you. And then we will neutralize the relationship between United States and Iran. And it was wrong because we can't go and negotiate with a dictator like Ali Khamenei, who has the blood of hundreds of thousands of Iranian young kids in his hand and a lot of Americans.
How many people? There are reports that the body count of dead people in Iran is over 22. Is it higher now?
Oh, it's look, I have been involved in these type of protests since 20 years ago when I was in Iran. I have been protesting. I have been leading the student movement in July 9, 1999. And we know about these type of protests. When they are saying it's more than 20, you should know it's more than 200. It's hundreds of people because 20 means we have the video of 20 people have been killed in front of the videos. And that's hundreds of people being killed and thousands of them being arrested. Regime is trying to minimize the protest. And that's interesting because the regime and liberal media, both of them together, they are trying to minimize the protest and say it's just a small protest, but it's not small. Millions of people in more than 100 cities, they are out and they are chanting death to dictator, death to Khamenei, death to Islamic Republic, and independency, freedom, and Republic of Iran.
But your group actually started this on December 23rd, as I understand, the Iranian National Congress. You issued a formal request for the citizens of Iran to begin major protest movements. So you have been in the planning stages of this. Obviously, there is a great desire of the people of Iran to have a better life. What is life like for them now? What is life like for women? What is life like for minorities? What is life like for the average person in Iran?
That's correct. We invited the people to come out and express their views because we have seen the potential. And after President Trump came up and with all promises, President Trump said, I will support Iranian people. If they come to street again, I will not be like Obama to not support them, to betray them. And then we have seen the people. It was a lot of hope. And then we said, okay, let's see what will happen with this potential. Last week, we invited people to come out, and even we couldn't believe in our wildest dream it will be that huge. And about the what was the next question?
Well, I want to go, what is life like for the average person in Iran? How oppressive is it?
You mentioned the women's. Thank you for mentioning that because in Iran, in the ideology of mullahs, ideology of Islamic Shia, the women are not real human. They are just type of animals.
They're abused by men.
It's officially they are mentioning in their books, their holy books, that women are animals with the skin of human to make man's calm.
That is their interpretation of women, and that's widespread, or is that only widespread among more radical Islamists?
It's the radical Islamists, but they are using their books. It's the Shia books. And then the regime thinks like that, but the people, we are talking this small group of fanatic mullahs who are in power.
We've seen videos of gays and lesbians thrown off of roofs and assassinated.
You know, if you want to go there and talk about these things, these very violent activities against the right of every people. Let me ask you this.
Look, I've often said this, and I don't know if you remember Tiananmen Square, and man, there was one iconic video that came out of this young man that was standing in front of the tank.
Yeah.
Okay. And the tank would move and he'd move. The tank would move, he would move. And I've often said this, that you can have a revolution, and I see what you're calling for, and they're all noble goals: a free and democratic government, which the Iranian people deserve, a new constitution, and defining a free and democratic Iran, and a free and democratic, honorable, responsible to the international community. All noble goals. But revolutions are not won with slingshots. They're not won with knives. When you have Qud forces, as you do in the Iranian National Guard, as powerful and well-armed as they are, my fear at this moment is that they will do, those that cling to power, the mullahs, they will do what is necessary, and they will mow down and potentially kill thousands of people. Do you share that fear?
You know what, Sean? When 11 years ago I escaped from prison, Evin prison, after 5 years of being tortured under.
I want to talk
regime.
about that in a minute.
And then, you know, when I came for the first time, I went to Washington D.C. I went to the mall, Washington Mall, and then I have seen the wall with the slogan "Freedom is not free." I was standing there and looking at that one.
It's not free, and give me liberty or give me death. But when it's happening in real time, and the world is now literally on the precipice, on the verge of a potential human catastrophe in your country. You grew up in Iran.
Yes.
Now, tell us the story about how you were put in prison and why and what happened.
I was a student activist, and my jail time was started.
What year was this?
That was, if I wanted translated to English, that was 1992, 93, those times.
All right, let's talk about the environment you grew up in. Were your parents radical? Were your parents free thinking? Were your parents fearful of the Ayatollah?
My father was Air Force Army officer, and no radical. You know, Iranian people, we are not radical. You know, these small group of fanatic mullahs, they are not representative of Iran. Just something very bad happened in 1979, and this small group of fanatic mullahs, they came to power, and since then they are just torturing and killing the real Iranians.
When the Ayatollah Khomeini came back in 1979 from exile, and he took over from the Shah of Iran, who came to the United States at the time, how quickly did the oppression come down on the people?
You know what? If you don't believe it, I mentioned it in my book, Comrade Ayatollah. I signed the copy and.
Oh, I know. Thank you.
And in this book, I mentioned the revolution happened, actual revolution, in 3 months.
That fast.
That fast. But before then, for maybe 15 or 20 years, Russia, KGB, they have been designing this revolution. They have been training mullahs.
Fomenting.
And for this, in this book, I have hundreds of documents which shows how the Russians, they trained mullahs to do Marxist Islamist revolution in Iran. But the actual revolution happened in 3 months. The people came out, and then the government decided to not kill the people, and Shah left the country.
All right, stay right there. We'll continue. Amir Fakhravar, I hope I said that well, is with us, and he is with the National Iranian Congress and its founder, and he has been active from the onset of this latest attempt by the Iranian people to get their freedom. We'll get back with more details. We'll talk about his prison time, how bad it was for him back in the day. 800-941-SEAN is a toll-free telephone number. You want to be a part of the program. Right, as we continue, Sean Hannity Show, 800-941-SEAN, a toll-free telephone number. We continue with Amir Fakhravar, who is with us, and he is the leader, if you will, of the National Iranian Congress, and he has been a part of the organizing and the day-to-day details of all the protests that have been happening in Iran. You spent 5 years in prison, so you were a student in Iran. You grew up in Iran. Why were you sent to prison for 5 years, and what happened?
You know, the first time when they arrested me and they sent me to jail, I couldn't believe it. And it took maybe a couple of days for me to even understand I'm in jail in solitary confinement, and I didn't know why they.
What did they? You don't even know why they arrested you. How old were you at the time?
The first time I was 17, and just because I, in one of my speeches at high school, I said, "Yeah, why the government is not using the talented young people more?" And then because of that, they said you spoke against national security. And then the second time when I was talking about the, then I went to the medical school, and then
so you're a medical doctor.
I was at that time, and then they didn't let me to finish my school, and then I went to law school in Iran, and I finished that one. Mm-hmm. And then when I was medical student, I was arrested again because in one of my speeches at school, I said, you know, it's looked like our country is not as free as our supreme leader says. And that was passing a lot of lines. And then they tortured me badly at that time. I was 18.
When you say tortured you badly, what did they do?
They broke many bones in my body, which most of them are fixed, but a couple of them still are not fixed. And then I'm still dealing with the pain. But it was
And
bad.
you spent how many years? 5 years?
5 years and 3 months.
And they beat you, they tortured you, they broke your bones.
Daily,
what did they take? Sticks and bats and how? I'll tell you what, we'll pick it up on the other side. We'll keep you for a few more minutes, then we'll get to the phones. 800-941-SEAN, a toll-free telephone number. And by the way, Amir Fakhravar is with us. He will be on Hannity tonight as part of our coverage. Is it possible to win a revolution with a slingshot? That's the difficult part of all this. Now we have Iranian leaders now demanding that France round up their French-based dissidents there. We'll give you the details of that as we continue straight ahead. All right, 25 till the top of the hour, 800-941-SEAN. You want to be a part of the program? I know everyone wants Palestine. What do you think of this Michael Wolff piece and the battle that's been going on with Steve Bannon and the president today? It's not my number one interest when you have hundreds of thousands of students now in Iran, unarmed in most cases, and trying to overthrow their government. And you're on the potential precipice, on the verge of these students being mowed down and shot and killed in cold blood. Finally, German Chancellor Angela Merkel has praised the Iranian protesters. We have Iran now, apparently the leadership so afraid they're demanding that France, they go out and round up all these French-based dissidents there. I don't think that's going to happen. Remember, in 1979 with the Iranian Revolution, after they deposed the Shah of Iran, then out of exile came the Ayatollah Khomeini. And that was the beginning of the decline of Iran. And the greatest fear in the Middle East, of course, is Iranian hegemony. And that is that, you know, all these threats against Israel, the United States, their nuclear ambitions, it would change the geopolitical makeup of the world in ways we can't even begin to anticipate. And to me, it's a simple formula. If you let radical mullahs get weapons of mass destruction, well, there enters the possibility of a nuclear holocaust in our time. One of the leaders of this latest uprising and these protests going on in Iran is Amir Fakhravar was with us, and he's with the Iranian National Congress. And you were telling us that for 5 years you were put in Iranian prison when you first spoke out as a student. You had your bones broken. You were tortured. What else happened? The worst type of torture was solitary confinement itself. Because when I was there, I had a lot of tortures, and they broke many of my bones when I was in solitary confinement, 8 months of solitary confinement, which was started before 9/11, 4 months before 9/11, and 4 months after 9/11, I came out of solitary confinement, and I realized it happened. Look how isolated I was in that situation. And it was very, very bad experience. What is it, a cell that's dark? Is it, explain, are there rats, are there mice? You're just thrown in what?
It's called white torture. Mm-hmm. And it's not dark. Instead of dark, it's you have 2 lights and 24 hours. You can't sleep and you can't see any color but just creamy white color around you. And
how do you mentally deal with that type of torture?
Honestly, because of my belief in God.
So you would pray a lot.
And
for example, when your bones weren't broken, would you try to stay in shape?
I was just.
How did you occupy your time, in other words?
I was thinking about future, and I was thinking about, okay, we should be strong, and we know freedom is not free. We should pay the price, and we are the one which should make the future Iran. We miss to be friend with the world. We miss to be friend with United States and Israel.
So they never broke you. They only increased your resolve. Did you have a set time in jail? Were you sentenced to 5 years? Is that what your sentence was?
That was my sentence, was 8 years, and then I escaped from even prison.
Explain that. Well, we'll get to that in a second. But I know this sounds silly, but if you're in a room by yourself for 8 months, and then you finally get out, but then you're hanging out with, what, Iran's worst, or maybe good people? Was it mostly good people in jail, or good people and a mix of bad people?
For 14 months, they sent me in jail. They sent me to exile to the maximum security. And when the judge sent me there, I was a student activist. And all those criminals, they have been looking at me and saying, what the hell he is doing here? And then I was there for 14 months.
So they put you among murderers and rapists and really bad people.
Judge said, I'm sending you there to make sure you will not come out alive. But I love God. God loves me and helped me a lot.
Did you have problems with those criminals?
You know what? That's the interesting story, because when I went there, because it was so unusual to be in that situation, they have been kind of afraid of me. They thought I'm part of agent of regime. I'm there to see what they are doing. And when I felt that, I said, okay, let's act smart and say, what's your problems? I'm coming to help you. And then I realized even those criminals in maximum security, they have been the victims of this brutal regime.
Let's talk about your escape. I got to imagine this is a scene for a future movie. Tell everybody. So how did you pull that off?
That's a long story. I mentioned that before, but with the help of some of my very good friends at the Bush administration at that time, specifically, I want to say thank you to Mr. Richard Perle, and who was working at Defense Department at that time. And Richard Perle helped me, and some of my friends in United States, Shahbazi family, specifically Manda Shahbazi, they helped me to manage to just make some fake documents and then can come out. And then when I was in Dubai, I escaped the country, and then over there, Richard Perle, in a couple of hours, came there, and we had the interview in front of camera, which was part of a documentary called The Case for War. And then over there, he mentioned for Iran, we don't need to go to war because we have a student movement, very, very strong student movement who are fighting with the regime. Why? When we do have millions of student activists who love United States, who love the values of the Western democracies, why even we need to send army there to fight with the regime? These people, they can fight with the regime. Just we need to give them the tools, which is internet. This is the thing they need.
All right, so you have been planning this latest round of protests. Where does this end? I mean, you do have the president. He's offering moral support. But as I said, you don't win revolutions with slingshots, and they're not armed.
We have plan. It's, the people, the stage of revolution will not stay in that stage. It's up to the regime. If regime wants to just leave the power, because I know
they're not going to leave power.
Then it goes to the next
What's
stage.
The next level?
And then the people will have access to gun too. And then it will not be...
Do you think that some of the Iranian troops are sympathetic to the people?
Oh, for sure. I told you, I'm coming from the military family. My father was a Air Force Army officer. And Iranian army, the traditional army, which was the structure of that army is American during the Shah. And then this army never caved to the Iranian mullahs.
But how do you communicate when they've been shutting down the internet on a daily basis? Now, we have seen videos that have gotten out. Apparently, you are able to communicate, and I don't even want to ask you how, but you're communicating with the people that are leading this. How difficult is communications, especially when you need to organize?
Definitely, I'm sure you know, Sean, the Iranian new generation, they are a lot smarter than those crazy mullahs in power.
They'll figure that out.
Yes, we figured that out, and then regime is shutting down, and they have some support.
You don't think they're going to go out and because we've seen this throughout history. People cling to power, and they will cling to power to the last breath. And unless somebody takes out the leadership of the regime, it seems like this task is like mission impossible.
But in Iran, honestly, it's not that hard to take out the regime elite. And we know how it's the other stage of the revolution. We will go there right now. It's constitutional revolution. And we drafted our constitution for future Iran. We sent it to the people via internet. We asked them to look at this constitution, compare it with the crazy Islamic Republic of Iran's constitution, and compare it with United States constitution, which gives freedom.
Is there enough suffering? Have enough people suffered? I mean, what percentage of the people of Iran want this democracy that you're pushing?
Go to 95%. Just that 5% who have money from the government.
But don't these regimes always treat their military really well?
No.
They don't?
No, not.
Well, that's a dumb play on their part.
Recently, look, in Iran, we have two sides of military. It's traditional army and it's Revolutionary Guard. Revolutionary Guard have been designed by Russians during the revolution in 1979 because they knew they cannot control the traditional army.
Isn't that their better killing force? Isn't that the regime's front line of defense?
The traditional army is supporting people. We have seen during last 2 weeks a lot of statements from traditional army. They are telling the Revolutionary Guard, just be careful. If you don't see us, that doesn't mean we are not there. Just be careful what you are doing with the people. We are standing with the people. We posted a couple of their statements out on our social medias, and it gave a lot of hope to the people because I am coming from that type of family, the traditional army family, and I know how loyal they are to the people and how much they are against the government. We can count on that army a lot.
You think so? How does this end? Because we've seen one revolution, attempts at revolution in many countries. Some succeed and some get crushed. I'd like to think that you succeed. I would like it for the people of Iran. I would like it to end these radicals that are in power. I would like to see an end to their nuclear ambitions. I think the world would be a safer place. And I think the natural condition of mankind, my own personal belief, in their heart, mind, and soul is to be free. Will this end? Will the ending be good, or is the ending? Are you confident it's going to end the way you want?
I'm 100% positive about it.
And how long will this take?
Because we have the plan. It's not going to be if it goes with the speed it's going right now. It's not. We don't need even to think about years. We should think about months. And it's.
What do the people of Iran want from the people of the United States? Do they like the people of the United States?
The people of Iran, they love Americans. And their feeling about President Trump, they really like President Trump. And, Iranian people, they have a couple of heroes right now, like Nikki Haley. With her comments and everything she is doing at United Nations, it's just tears coming to millions of Iranian people inside Iran when they are looking at her. And I think, oh my God, finally somebody is talking on behalf of us. And President Trump, every single comment of just check the social media and see how much support he has. Here in United States, the Iranian American, which many of them, they have been coming here during Obama administration, which they are regime loyalists, which is very crazy. And we know a lot of these people, the Basijis, their family members, they could come here easily with the help of Obama administration. These people, they are chanting against President Trump, but the real Iranians, millions of them inside Iran, they love President Trump.
Who are the people that keep showing up on behalf of the regime as counter-protesters?
It's just the regime has a militia called Basij. This is Revolutionary Guard's militia. Some dumb idiots who their IQ level is very, very low. These people, even with one lunch, you can bring him to street to chant, yeah, we love Hannity. And if you follow the news, you will see it's exactly the similar faces.
Where does Hannity hide out?
That's a good question. I asked that on my Instagram post yesterday, and I said,
"Does anybody know
he is?" We have some information about him because some of his very, very close people, they defected, and we are in touch with them right now. We know every single place Khamenei could go and can go. He sent his family to Russia. You can't believe it. A couple of days ago, they went with a charter airplane, went to Russia, went to Moscow, and they don't feel safe right now. Many of Iranian officials and their family members, they left the country already, and they asked their attack dogs.
You think this is it? You think this is the moment where the revolution will be overthrown?
We are at the time, and we need international community support.
What do you want the international community to do?
International community right now, honestly, means United States and Israel, you know, because international community, European leaders, I'm glad finally German Chancellor came up, but look at the other leaders of Europe.
What about Prime Minister Netanyahu? He has offered his support for the Iranian people. He makes the distinction between the people and its government.
He is doing great. And he has a lot of support inside Iran with millions of Iranian people too. And he is doing a great job as President Trump is doing. And, you know, you ask, what do we need right now? We need President Trump to give order. We know U.S. military is using type of satellite internet. We need, if regime right now is going to shut down the internet, we need to have satellite internet to make sure entire Iran will have the coverage of internet first. Second, here in the United States, we need the oil sanction. Oil sanction and central bank sanction comes up again. This time, Obama is not president to go behind the scene and give the pallet of cash to Iranian government. This time is different. We need oil sanction to come up. Just think about it, Sean. 85 to 90% of regime's economy is based on petrodollars. We should cut the lifeline of regime and don't let them have access to money, oil money.
I know that a lot of us in this country, we forget the high cost of freedom. I pray that there won't be many lives lost. That's not usually the case in revolution. And we wish all the best. I believe it's the natural state of mankind to be free. And I think the oppression has caused this. And I wish you and your regime well. And God bless you. And you're in our prayers. And I hope we're able to help in some way, because I think the world's going to be better off as soon as these guys are gone. Thank you, Amir. Thanks for being with us.
Thank you, Sean, for having me.